Mr. President, I want to get back to Iran. We lost 3 service members last week. May they rest in peace. In Jordan, an enemy drone from Iranian-backed proxies launched that deadly drone strike, killed our heroes. What should be the proper response?
Before you go too far, would have never happened with me. I had Iran in check. Do you know, we hit them very hard for something that they did, and they had to hit back. They feel they have to do that, and I understand that. Do you know they called me to tell me we're going to hit a certain location, but we're not going to hit it. It's going to be outside of the perimeters.
Who called you?
Iran called me. Iran called for me. And they let us know, and we had 16 missiles went off. I believe it was 16. 6 or 7 failed in the air.
When was this?
This was prior to the attack on a fort that we had where they hit back. Do you remember when they sent 18 missiles or 16 missiles? 5 failed. They let us know, don't move. We're going to have to hit you back. Psychologically, we have to do that because we hit them on something. You remember. They sent 16 or 18 missiles, and we knew they weren't going to hit inside the fort. And the media was going, and now I reveal it, the media was going wild because they say it's strange. They're very accurate missiles. How come they all missed? Nobody was killed, if you remember.
Yes,
with all of those missiles, nobody was killed. Now, they had to do it because they have people and they have to show strength. So they aimed the missiles, but they said, please don't attack us. We're not going to hit you. That was respect. We had respect. When we took out Soleimani, you know, Israel was supposed to do it with us. 2 days before the takeout, they said, we can't do it. We can't do it. I said, what? We can't do it. Then I had a certain general who's great. I said, so, General, do we do it ourselves? He said, we can, sir. It's up to you. I said, we'll do it. But Israel was a part of it. You know, Bibi was a big part of it. And we had everything planned, everything, because what he has done is terrible. What he did to us was terrible. Killed so many of our soldiers. Killed so many people. He's the father of the roadside bomb. You know that, right? And Soleimani, we can't, it was just incredible. And al-Baghdadi, I wiped him out too. Yeah. We took out al-Baghdadi, the founder of ISIS, that nobody could find except me, and Soleimani, father of the roadside bomb. Yeah. Now, and beyond that, killed many people. He was going to attack 5 of our military bases, and we took him out. And we took him out without Israel, because Israel, 2 days before the attack, they said, we cannot participate.
And it's time for the hot topic of the hour. That was former President Trump joining me yesterday on Sunday Morning Futures, explaining how relations with Iran were under control under his presidency, much more so than they are under the Biden administration. Cheryl Casone, he shared a story there with the Iranian attacks, having warned the president at the time to make a point that there was respect there. Obviously, these strikes over the weekend are President Biden's response to the Iranian deadly strike on our soldiers.
Well, look, I mean, no, because these Iran-backed militant groups, not just the Houthis, but the others, is a different group that's responsible for killing those 3 service members. And remember, we also lost 2 Navy SEALs that were trying to recover weapons coming from Iran that was going to the Houthis. All of this is happening right now. And I have to go back to Afghanistan, Maria, because that is when the United States and our reputation on the world stage changed because of that disastrous exit of Afghanistan. So when you talk about a lack of strength and the way that we were viewed now, I think that is the reason and where this all began. And also, too, with, you know, Jake Sullivan not wanting to answer any questions about what the strategy was, I'm not sure that they really do have a strategy. I mean, look, you know, they're not financial. It's not a financial strategy to go after Iran. They're not, you know, it's not sanctions. We've learned that, or even honoring the sanctions, you know, $6 billion that's sitting out there that Iran has access to. Or, you know, is it a military plan? Well, that doesn't seem to be a very strong reaction either. How many more Americans have to die in the Middle East? What happens when a ship finally gets sunk? And I'm saying finally, because Katie McFarland said to me flat out, it's going to happen. Then what do? This President Biden just doesn't know how to respond.
Well, it's not just that he doesn't know how to respond. He's not seen as strong on the global stage. I mean, they don't take what he's doing as getting feared by America any longer. I mean, that's one of the issues. And, you know, America's strength on the global stage is one of the issues that you wanted me to raise with President Trump, Mark Tepper. You said to me when we were talking about the questions to ask Trump, you said, one of your questions was, how do you get America back on the strength that we saw under his leadership on the global stage? And you know what he said to me? I did ask your question, Mark.
Thank you.
He said, the first thing you have to do is close the border.
Oh, yeah.
The first thing you have to do is ensure that the world knows you have borders and sovereignty. Which raises this issue of the Senate border deal. President Trump reacted to the Senate border deal. It was released, the text was released late last night, but even going into this, before we knew the text, we understood that it was 5,000 illegals a day that were going to be allowed in before we could do anything about it.
Yeah.
As a record number of migrants pour in every day. Here's what President Trump said about the Senate border deal. Watch this.
You can't do a bad deal. The deal they're looking at is terrible. It's no good, and it's no good for the Republicans. And frankly, any Republican that signs it should be ashamed of himself or herself. It's 5,000. You don't have to look beyond that because it's a very weak deal. But for starters, they want to allow 5,000 people to come on to our country, like on a daily basis, they said, on a daily basis, 5,000 people. That's a lot of people.
Why would Langford be agreeing to that?
I don't know. He's a very nice man. Maybe Mitch McConnell.
Mark, your reaction.
Well, first of all, that Senate deal is an awful deal. I mean, basically what they're saying is we need money for Ukraine to the tune of $60 billion.
Right.
And in exchange for that, we're willing to cut the migrant number in half. It's still going to be 150,000 a month. It might not be 300,000 a month. But look, that is not a good deal. And I agree with President Trump. I mean, look, you don't want to sign a bad deal. One of the issues is right now, President Biden, he doesn't need a deal to shut down the border. He can shut down the border with the stroke of a pen, but he doesn't want to because it would be political suicide for him at this point. He would have to admit that he was wrong for the last 3 years, that he put America in harm's way, that we now have migrants beating up cops and then flipping off the camera. He would have to admit he was wrong, and I believe that would hand the election directly to President Trump.
It's pretty incredible. Our guys on the ground analyzing this text say that the cartels are likely to game the system and move to a metering system to stay under the 5,000 trigger. I mean, it's extraordinary to me, Cheryl, that the people who are actually running entree into America are these dangerous drug cartels. That's who's in charge of the border. Let's be honest.
Yeah, the cartels are also directing these migrants that owe them money where to go. And then they've got operations set up in several states across this country. And don't get me started on the Venezuelan gangs that are also now operating in several cities across this country, Maria.
Yeah.
Gangs. You knew this was going to happen. You could have written this script years ago.
Yeah, and you've got human trafficking underway in America as a result of this because you got to pay back the drug cartels once you're in America, and that's how they're doing it. You know, firing up their businesses for human trafficking and drug trafficking. We've got a spotlight on it for sure. We'll be right back.